There was this idea that we all have two lives. There's the one we're actually living, and then there's the unlived one that's kind of buzzing away inside us. Author Stephen Pressfield says the only thing standing between those two lives is a force he calls resistance. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into his book, Turning Pro, and figure out how to beat that resistance and finally start doing the work you were meant to do. So let's just get right to it with the big question. Are you living as an amateur or as a professional? And look, this has nothing to do with your job title or how much money you make. Nope, this is all about your mindset. It's about how you show up for your life's work, your true calling. Pressfield, he really doesn't mince words here. He says this shift from amateur to pro, it's so massive, it literally splits your life in two. But what does that actually mean? What's the real difference between being an amateur and being a professional? Well, let's break it all down. All right, so let's dig into these two paths, these two completely different ways of being in the world. I mean, just look at the contrast. The amateur is totally run by fear. Fear of failing, fear of succeeding, even fear of just being seen. So they run. They hide out in denial, in distraction. But the professional, and this is key, they feel that exact same fear, but they make a totally different choice. They turn around and face it. And right there, in that confrontation, that's where they find their power. It's the difference between being asleep at the wheel of your own life and being wide awake. Okay, so if living like an amateur is so unfulfilling, why do so many of us get stuck there? Well, it's because we fall into these really sneaky traps, into what Pressfield calls a shadow life. And one of the biggest traps he talks about is the shadow career. It's this thing that looks and feels a whole lot like our true calling, but it's really just a clever imitation. Think about the person who spends 10 years getting a PhD in literature because deep down they're terrified to actually write their own novel. It gives you the illusion of making progress, without any of the real, scary, soul-bearing risk. And Pressfield is the first to admit he lived this. His own shadow career was driving trucks. He wasn't just making a living, he was playing this part, this tough, romantic, on-the-road character that felt like a writer's life. But what was really going on? It was the perfect excuse to never, ever have to face that blank page. He was literally running away from his calling, 1 mile at a time. This whole idea of shadow work, it also shows up as addiction. And hey, we're not just talking about substance abuse. It could be an addiction to drama, to starting arguments online, to a toxic relationship. The key insight here, the real kicker, is that the payoff for all these behaviors is always the same. They make you incapable. They're just really sophisticated forms of self-sabotage designed to make sure we can't do our real work. So how in the world do you break free from all that? Well, a lot of the time, the shift from amateur to pro isn't slow and gradual. It's more like a lightning strike, triggered by a single, powerful moment, an epiphany that just shatters all your delusions. Let me tell you a great story about this. It's about the singer-songwriter Rosanne Cash. So, on the outside, she had it all. #1 hits, fame, the whole deal. But on the inside, she felt like a total fake, like a dilettante who wasn't taking her own art seriously at all. And then one night, she has this incredibly powerful dream. In it, she's at some party and she's trying to talk to her idol, Linda Ronstadt. And this old man who, with that weird dream logic, she just knows his name is Art. And the old man, who is basically the embodiment of art itself, he just turns and looks at her with complete contempt and says this one absolutely crushing line, "We don't respect dilettantes." And then he just turns his back on her. Oof. Even in a dream, that humiliation was real. And that one painful moment, that was her wake-up call. It changed absolutely everything. She stopped chasing hit singles and started chasing mastery. As she put it, she woke up from the morphine sleep of success and for the first time truly began the life of an artist. And that right there is the heart of turning pro. It's not some course you can take or a product you can buy. It's a decision, a choice you make. It's totally free, but man, it is not easy. It's going to cost you your old self, all your favorite excuses, and your comfortable distractions. But what you get in return is something no amount of money can ever buy. You find your will, your power, and this deep, unshakable self-respect that only comes from honoring your true calling. Okay, so you've had the epiphany. You've made the decision. Now what? How does this huge internal shift actually show up in your daily life? Well, it all comes down to practice. It all comes down to your habits. You can literally write the story of the amateur versus the pro just by looking at their daily habits. The amateur, They're constantly distracted. The professional, they refuse to be. The amateur is always looking for someone to give them permission. The pro, they validate themselves. And here's maybe the biggest difference of all. The amateur sits around and waits for inspiration to strike. The professional just shows up today, knowing that showing up is what creates inspiration. They act in anticipation of it. At the end of the day, being a pro isn't a feeling. It's a code of conduct. It's about showing up every single day, especially on the days you really don't feel like it. It's about being patient, about pushing through the hard times, and committing to mastering your craft for the long haul. And it means you stop accepting excuses, especially the ones you tell yourself. This is how a pro turns their work into a practice. You know, like a martial artist or a concert pianist? They create a ritual. They have a sacred space, even if it's just one corner of their desk. They have a consistent time they show up. And their goal isn't just to get it done. It's to go deeper, to get better, and to fully explore the mystery of whatever it is they're called to do. But why? Why go through all this personal struggle? Because in the end, and this is the most beautiful part, turning pro isn't just about you. It's about what you bring back for the rest of us. This quote just reframes the entire thing, doesn't it? All those years you might spend in the wilderness, fighting your own demons, failing and getting back up. That's not just pointless suffering. That is the hero's journey. And it's the price of admission for the gift that you are meant to bring back to the world. This is the ultimate purpose of turning pro. You take all the raw, messy material of your life, the pain, the joy, the insights, and through the focused discipline of your practice, you basically transform it into a gift. Maybe it's a book or a business or a piece of music, or maybe it's just a well-raised kid. It's your unique contribution offered up to the world. And so, that brings us right back to where we started, but now with a whole new way of looking at it. The question comes back to you. What is that unlived life that's been waiting inside you all this time? What is the work that's calling you, right now, to finally turn pro?